We are live. Welcome to the show, my EOS friends. Today we have a great show for you. We've got Michael Yeates from EOSdac. We've got Bohdan and Roman from Crypto Lions. We've got a really interesting show about the Jungle 2 mainly, and we have a big announcement about EOS that we're going to tell you about today. Some exciting news about scaling. Let's just go ahead and get started. So let's start with you, Roman. Introduce yourself, and then each of you just introduce yourself. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us again. It's always a pleasure. Well, I'm Bohdan's co-founder of Crypto Lions, block producers. We're probably best known for managing the Jungle Testnet community that has been running since March.
Cool. Well, welcome to the show, both of you. And how about you, Michael?
So I'm Michael Yeates. I'm one of the launch team members of EOSdac, one of the founders, I guess. I've been working in EOS for about a year now, and yeah, it's good to be here.
Well, pleasure to have you. Well, I like to start the show and just ask, what is most exciting that's going on in EOS in general right now? So we can start with you again, Roman.
Most exciting is exciting in a bad way. It's the price action. It's hard to ignore it, but you know, you could fit a civilization in the space between the hype and the reality. So that space needed to close, and we just have a lot of work to do. You know, it's not so dramatic that we all still don't have businesses. We still have businesses in crypto, for which we are very thankful, and we are building stuff and closing that gap between hype and reality. That's most exciting in EOS. Most exciting for us is Jungle 2 and the stress testing that happened recently, which I think we'll talk about later.
Cool. Yeah, we'll get into that for sure. For sure. The price is there's two questions there kind of. There's been some talk about, I mean, it's just low rumblings about wanting to possibly increase the price, or that it's putting some real heavy pressure on BPs. What's your guys' take on the price related to BP operation costs?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's gotten harder. Like, we could still, BPs need to be ready to scale up as well as scale down, you know? Yeah. And, you know, at current token prices, we could easily still scale down and run our infrastructure. We have made trade-offs about our projects. We said, hey, we can't keep developing Daru Truth Bonds if we want to also expand our history node infrastructure. Okay. So we're making trade-offs, but, you know, we're still here. We're still building. We're still in business.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's that it's a trade-off, and they need to be able to scale down. I think that's and be resilient and robust to the types of price changes, because I mean, especially in something like crypto, where the price is obviously going to change. I mean, we just saw that happen with Steemit. Basically, kind of some poor planning or management that was dependent on price continuing to stay stable or rise was how they were paying their entire operation. And so when price went down, they fell apart. So to think about being resilient for that to BPs is important for sure. You know, we don't need to talk too much about price. I mean, it is what it is. It's great to see people, the teams are continuing to build, and I think that Cypher Glass just put out an interesting article I haven't read yet, but the title looked like it was basically that it's more about measuring the amount of projects that are going on than it is about looking at the price. And the amount of projects is going wild right now. So, yeah. Well, let's get into Jungle 2. Speaking of projects, go ahead and introduce it, what it is, and why it's here. So whoever wants to take that question.
So we started Jungle 2 as community decided to start a new chain, as we had the poison block in the Jungle Classics that make harder to restrict the nodes and start for new users to use the Jungle Classic. And the community decided to reset the chain, but we actually started the new chain, and Classic chain is still working and just work on the one server. And we will support this old chain till end of the year. the new jungles, but in the Jungle Classic we had more than 86,000 accounts registered after initial distribution, and over 10 million transactions were done during this period.
Wow.
Jungles Classic were started on the June day before the mainnet was launched.
Restarted because it was operating in March,
restarted.
April, May.
Yeah, that's great. That's so much use.
During this start launching process, we did 3 distribution in the new jungle. So it was the initial distribution, the jungles distribution, and the migration distribution. We have 340 accounts that mentioned to be that they would like to be migrated from a classic chain to the new chain, and we create special script to migrate this account, so they were migrated.
And as I understand from what you told me, it was actually an EOSdac account that had really intricate permissions. Like the permissions themselves was just like a puzzle palace. So that one had to be, in order to keep our promise of migrating everything, we had to migrate that one by hand.
Yeah, this was this one account I did manually because it was this huge permission list.
So thanks for that, Michael.
Yeah, what makes the permissions so much more in depth for EOSdac?
I think, well, we have our custodians, so we have 12 accounts which control the single account, and then that single account then controls all of our other accounts. So we have token contracts, we have the elections contracts, we have a few other different contracts, and they're all controlled by the 12 people. So we have to have this complicated chaining of permissions between accounts. Plus we use weights on there as well. So any token transfers from the from the contract require an hour's delay so that we have time to check that everything is good and that we haven't suffered from a hack or something.
Okay. So we have Jungle Classic. What's different with Jungle 2? So what's the big upgrade?
Yeah, we together with Costa Rica created new brand because EOS Costa Rica created the website. There is the new website for Jungles 2.0, jungletestnet.io. And now is the entry point to the Jungle Testnet. So we created the new monitor. We have a new Git repository, and we created the new auto installer script, which helps people to jump in jungles faster. So it allows you to install from binaries or from sources, and also give you opportunity to choose the synchronization process, use the classic way or use the snapshot, and it was everything automated. So this all was created for Jungles 2.0, and we have already more than 3 million transactions during these 2 weeks. Wow.
So you made it so it's going to be a lot more user friendly, basically, for the BPs that are testing on it. They're going to is that a safe call?
It seems like BP testing has become less important, and now it's more DAC testing.
Oh, good call. Yeah.
Oh, incidentally, in Jungle Classic, there were 700 BPs registered.
Wow.
So now, is that right? Number 700, yeah.
More than.
So I think the focus is shifting from just helping, to be an environment where we just, people learn how to be good block producers, to becoming an environment where dApps can launch, as well as being a place where good testing happens. And we're certainly sharing that with the Kylin Testnet. There's a lot of great testing happening there as well.
Is it still kind of a thing where BPs are on the Jungle Testnet, constantly testing, or is that kind of faded out? How many BPs would you say that are on there testing at this point? Or is it just ones that are starting up before they get running?
I think everyone has own test sometimes, different times, but time to time we do together testing, party test parties, as we had just a few days ago.
Okay. So, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, they're not the kind of things we want to be testing on the mainnet.
Yeah, of course. Okay, of course. What kind of DApps are on their testing, and how many DApps, and what's the activity look like at this right now?
We've been asked that a few times. We don't really track it. I suppose we could, but sometimes we just see like a little blurb here and there that, hey, we did this in the jungle, and we think, oh, that's cool. That's cool that people are, using it. But I don't think we don't. Yeah.
But I'm working with jungles all the time, and I see the transaction are going. So I see this DApp and other DApp, and some games are tested. So all the time, a lot of testing are going there.
Okay. And before you guys launched Jungle 2, obviously you tested it as well. And I guess, Michael, you did some help with the stress testing, it sounds like, and then
I joined the party. Yeah.
Joined the party. What was that like, and how many people were helping with that?
I think there was about 10 or so, 8 to 10 people. Yeah, it's good fun. It's all of us just jumping in and changing settings and playing with it and seeing if we can break it and trying new ideas and seeing what does what. We don't get an awful lot of documentation or guidance or any kind of official help, so we kind of just jump in and test it ourselves and think of ideas about how we can try to break it and how we can adjust the settings, because there's a lot of settings in the core of EOS which are not modified on mainnet, and therefore we don't know exactly what changing them has an effect, and now we're a lot wiser, I guess. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's half fun and half business, I guess.
That's like all of the EOS blockchain, half fun, half business. It's a good way to look at it. So I think that you guys have a announcement that we can hold off a little longer on and make people wait for it, or we can kind of tell them as far as you guys can time that how you'd like. So, but is there anything else that we're kind of missing on the Jungle Testnet, or any kind of things you want to talk about as far as how it's going? Good. All right. All right. Cool. Well, so did you want to talk about the transactions per second that you've been getting on there? Or?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for the cue.
Yeah, no problem.
9,179 transactions per second. 9,179 transactions per second. That's in 2 adjacent blocks. Total transactions in 2 adjacent blocks that came out inside of a second. So this is a stat that a lot of people pay attention to, and that's what we've demonstrated. One of those blocks had 6,000 something transactions. The other one had less. So, there's that theoretical limit is always higher. We also thought that we smashed even that record with like 16,000 TPS. But it was kind of funny because after we all celebrated in Telegram, all posting our favorite animated GIFs, it was kind of revealed that they were actually expired transactions. So we got 16,000 transactions in there, but they happened to be expired. So maybe we should call that ETPS, fastest ETPS blockchain.
I'll take it. We can put it out. We can put out in the announcement the ETPS 16,000. But yeah, that 9,000 and some change there, transactions per second. That's huge, because what was the past record for transactions per second?
The past record was 3,996, and it seemed, Michael, please chime in if you could add to this, but it seemed like there was one global variable that was causing that limit. We were bumping against this limit, and on our first day of testing, we were puzzled that we couldn't get over 3,996 until we started playing with the system variables.
Yeah, so there's a setting for max CPU per block, and for minimum CPU per transaction. So the max CPU block was 200,000 or something, and the minimum the minimum that we would ever charge in CPU for a transaction was set to 100, which meant that no matter how many quick transactions we put in there, it was always billing 100. So if you divide the 200,000 by 100, you would always end up with 2,000, which was the limit of the number of transactions per block. So we reduced the minimum billing, and that immediately raised it. And then we changed the max per block, and that again raised it as well. So
that's great news. It's fun to have cool announcements and breaking news here on the podcast. I know you've got a announcement, or this is going to come out kind of nearly the same time. What's your media, or where are you going to post your announcement about the transactions per second, or your explanation of it, Roman, so people can find it?
I thought we just put it on Medium, Crypto Lions on medium.com. I've invited all the block producers who took part to put it through their channels as well. So I don't know who'll be first, but we decided to do it tomorrow. I guess when people are watching it, it's already today, December 5th, which is the 1-year anniversary of the release of Dawn 2. Oh. So I think all the block producers will do it. It was a big team effort.
Cool. Well, congratulations. Excuse me. Congratulations to you guys, because I know the Testnet Jungle Classic was a stalwart of the community, has been there since the beginning, and so to see it evolve is fantastic. To see you guys making new ground is awesome. So big congratulations to you, and it sounds like this will just be all over social media, so people will be able to dig into it however they want. Cool. So let's transition a little bit into your other things you got going on. As far as Crypto Lions go, you did rebranding a little while ago, which I like, so that's cool. And you've got for people who are listening, check out Crypto Lions' new logo. And if you're listening also, I'd have to describe the background for you. They've got a green screen and they're actually sitting in a jungle. So that's kind of fun for you.
There's no green screen. I don't know what you're talking about.
Actually, yeah, no green screen. No green screen. Part of his chest is actually see-through. So I was going to ask you guys about your history node upgrade, because you mentioned that a little bit earlier. Can you talk about the history node upgrade first? What the history node is, so people understand what it is, and then the upgrade you did.
So it's the node that keep the history information, and developers can access, or users can access this old information about action traces, or transaction ID. So, and there is different approach to use the history information. The first one was the all history plugin, that in this moment is deprecated by, but still working. And after it was MongoDB plugin, and now there is more projects working on this field. There is the ZamQ plugin, the Light
Elasticsearch
plugin, new state history plugin, and there is new. But the first was the history plugin, and the second was the Mongo plugin. And when the Mongo plugin appeared, we created the API that gives the opportunity to query this Mongo history information. So it was we tried to do the same as it was done in the classic history plugin, and but the requests were a little different, but the API was the same. So we created few servers and right now we had from 20 to 30 requests per second to this our service.
Great. So it's getting a lot of use, it sounds like. And so you've created an API that can query the blockchain history. What would be, give an example of a use case for that, for either a dApp developer or maybe a user, like what, so people can, tell a story about how that works.
It's history information. For example, you can get what action did the user. For example, you can get action by user by some special action. For example, get all question, for example, what action by selected users. And this history model will get this all information and prepare it for you.
Yeah, history is essential for any dApp developers. We can submit transactions to the chain, but then we have to read it to see what happened, and we have to look at previous actions to see what happened in those actions. And yeah, without any visibility into these actions, it's very hard to write a DApp, which is why having a history plugin is important, and why when it's all falling apart, it really affects the DApp developers.
So I think there are two evolutions that we're going to see. One is the evolution of standards. There's the MongoDB history API, which Bohdan made. There's ZMQ. There's an Elasticsearch. There's Defuse from EOS Canada. And developers are going to have to make the choice. And maybe the people supporting these plugins have to talk about standardizing things or not standardizing things. I don't even know if it's possible. So that's one evolution. And the second evolution is like, it's, for us, it's economically non-trivial to run the history node API, which right now is getting 20 to 30 queries per second steady. So that's a non-trivial cost. And I'm sure, with all the work being done in the background, I'm sure it's only going to go up. So it's some kind of economic model is going to need to be built. I don't think block producers can continue indefinitely to provide history nodes for free.
Yeah, so these history nodes are gonna, as they gain traction, or as more dApps come on the blockchain and start using them, it's gonna be pretty prohibitive cost possibly to block producers. How do you see that possibly getting monetized, or at least the costs offset? What do those economics maybe look like?
Well, we've actually thought of making we've actually been approached already by people who just want us to run a premium history node for them. They'll pay for it, we'll maintain it, and like only they will get access to it. That's probably the simplest way to do it, to just do a dedicated history node for some game company that wants it. Then you can get really creative. I think Block Matrix, really, really cool guys. They have a project that sort of scatters, that balances history requests over different history servers. We're talking with EOS Rio about a project that will create a cluster of history nodes together and balance across them. Oh, for Jungle, that's just for Jungle. And if you wanna really be true to the spirit of EOS, you make an API token and create some tokenomics around the history nodes, and we're discussing that too, mostly because it's just a fun idea.
Yeah, that is a cool idea. Okay, well that's big stuff. So you guys are, between Jungle 2 and the history nodes, and you guys are putting in a lot of work. So, and let's talk about EOSdac a little bit. I'm kind of curious your roadmap, where you're at right now. I saw on your roadmap, Michael, that you have 50% of the handover done to custodians. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So at the moment, we're pretty much ready to start the handover process. What we're doing at the moment, and the percentage you see, is the number of members that we have now. So if you own EOSdac tokens, you will have to come to our members application and register as a member. So that's the number who are actually said they've agreed to our constitution, they agree to all the terms, and that they are now officially members as opposed to just token holders. We haven't opened voting yet. We are still gathering people who would like to be custodians. So if you could be a custodian if you like. You can register. We've had a lot of legal stuff that we need to figure out first. Some technical stuff, which has all turned out to be way harder than we initially imagined. We spent almost a year working out the business and the legal aspects of running a DAC. So at the moment we're at the stage where we've opened up for custodian registration, and any minute now we are going to open up the full voting. And those permissions we talked about earlier, as soon as the voting is completed up to 15% and we have enough custodians, those permissions will be automatically changed on the account, and it's free then. We don't have any more access to the account, and it will run as it's supposed to run.
Wow.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed. It's a big step for us, and so we're just making sure that everything is in place before we finally release it to the wild, to the jungle.
Yeah.
So at the moment the voting hasn't started, and we will need 15% voting to unlock the DAC. But we think that actually people are going to be a bit more interested in the voting rather than just becoming members. So at the moment, it's kind of so it's just a signal that they are interested in becoming members.
So how many custodians will the DAC have, and what is the role of the custodian?
So there'll be 12 custodians, and their job would be to approve various proposals. We're going to have work proposal systems. So if you want to work for the DAC, like I'll work for the DAC, I'll submit a proposal to say I'll do the block production, or I'll do the technical design, or whatever, and then the custodians will approve that, and then they actually sign the transaction to pay everybody. They would also sign any transactions on behalf of block production. So any of these proposals that we see for block producers, they would have to be signed by the custodians, which would then sign on the chain for the main block production company.
Okay, so is each custodian running a node?
No, each custodian just has to sign a transaction proposal. So we create a proposal which says that we need 10 out of 12 signatures for this to be sent to the chain. So it's a transaction which is not signed yet, but when it's signed by all of them, then it's sent to the chain and it's executed. So it could be a transfer, it could be an approval of something on chain for the block production, it could be an approval of a worker, and we have different levels of requirement for each thing. And yeah.
Cool. What do you think like the time requirement is for people who are out there who thinking, oh, maybe I want to apply to be a custodian? What's that job look like?
We'll tell you when we start to do it, but at the moment we're it's like I say, it's going to be a lot of signing proposals, and it's going to be a lot of discussing and debating what the actual direction of the DAC is. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if they sign proposals for workers to say we want block production to be number one priority, then that's what we'll do. If they all decide that we want to go off and actually make EOSdac not a block producer, that's entirely possible as well. We simply don't know. So it's going to be really interesting, that's for sure. That's all I know 100% is that it's going to be interesting and fun. So I mean, the DAC has, in its constitution, we are a block producer and we are also a DAC enabler. So the hope that I have is that we're going to build the software which other DACs will use to run on mainnet. And we've already got quite a few different DApps and DACs involved. We're talking to them and discussing their requirements for how they want to be a DAC. And yeah, my main objective is that we will be a good block producer and that we will help other people become DACs as well. And we're trying to make up the rules as we go along, honestly. There's no guidebook for how to do all of this. So that's why it's probably taken a little bit longer than some people thought. And yeah, it will take its own shape and we'll see. So I hope that we can get a lot of DACs springing up from it, which will improve the EOS ecosystem and just create businesses on the EOS mainnet, which will drive innovation.
Yeah, I know that DAC enabler is a big part of your mission and basically building a system where other projects can come on and be DACs. So yeah, you're in some really brave territory there as far as breaking new ground. And so I know asking any questions a little bit in the future doesn't make too much sense because you got to figure every little piece out as you go. So
yeah, I mean, there's always my impression of, or my idea about what will happen, but as we've seen with the EOS mainnet and with any kind of crypto project, you don't know quite how it's going to happen, especially when you start saying that, you know, any elected custodian will have some decision on what we're going to do. It's possible that all the elected custodians may say, we're not going to do DAC enablement, we're just going to make block producing, and we're going to take the rewards and send them out to the token holders, which I don't think would be an ideal situation. It wouldn't be something that I would be particularly interested in. So we'll see. So if you have any tokens, please vote for people who are going to enable DACs. And we've got a huge, I'm really, really impressed, honestly, with the list of custodians that we've got already. There's quite a lot of people from around the community who are well-respected and intelligent people. And even if I'm never elected, I think it will do well. I think there's a good bunch of people there.
Yeah, I saw the list of custodians. There is a lot of the big thinkers in EOS there, and a lot of well-respected people. So
people I never imagined would sign up, and they've signed up. So that's very encouraging, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not filled with sock puppets so far.
They said so far, yeah. Never know, huh?
Yeah.
Well, Roman, what do you think about the DAC movement, or the decentralized block producer action?
Oh, I think it's incredible, and I think Michael Yeates and the other guys at EOSdac, they're really like showing what's possible and sort of giving us a lot of ideas as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's one of the main things. I think it's closest to the spirit of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, it's if somehow the DAC becomes kind of this simplified structure, which EOSdac is trying to do, where it's there's kind of a roadmap for other it opens the door for other block producers to have that option. Right now, as a block producer, it's like, well, that seems almost impossible. These guys are doing some big stuff. But if someone paves the way, then maybe other block producers are out there be like, okay, well, maybe we want to be a DAC as well, and each one of those block producers that distributes itself makes the chain more resilient. So,
I would also say, even more abstractly, it's not just, block producers deciding to decentralize their ownership, but it's like, it's sort of partly a template for any kind of group of people to structure their incentives and control however they want. And what excites me most is the possibility of mutual aid societies making a comeback. Before the welfare states, there were mutual aid societies in the United States. Like, almost everybody belonged to a fraternity or sorority or some mix of the two, and that's where they got their unemployment insurance, their health insurance. And if it was all your friends who were, who were taking care of you when you were unemployed or taking care of you when you were sick, you could imagine how little tolerance they had if you decided to be a free rider. So I see DAC movements as the ability for people to just organize in new ways and structure their incentives in new ways that really help people form these efficient societies around any vector, around, insurance, business, block production, games, whatever.
Yeah, I agree. We only chose block production because we thought it would be fun. And it's what I was doing at the time. We were messing around on Jungle Testnet and the Superhero Testnet before that. And so it was suggested maybe we should make a DAC which is a block producer. And it seemed like a hard challenge, which is what we were up for. But long term, a DAC could be literally anything. Like you say, it could just be a club. It could be a chess club. And how do you manage the subscriptions for a chess club? And how do you decide where to arrange the meetings and that kind of thing? Like, how do you organize as a group and have it all automated and have everything running very verifiably and very, very objectively? Yeah.
Yeah, it's this bigger idea of taking the kind of the bureaucracy out of governing and bringing it down to a more micro scale where it's manageable, but you still kind of get the benefits of what a governing body gives you, which is a really cool concept. And what you were saying about the welfare system, for example, is a great example, because as systems grow and they get so complex, and there becomes an unmanageable amount of perverse incentives where we can't really see or know all the different attack vectors and ways that this is going to be taken advantage of. But when you can have it governed on a smaller level, like you said, like friends and family, or a neighborhood who knows you, then all of a sudden the incentives are aligned how they're supposed to be. So, I mean, yeah. So, and also the chance of failure with a big system too, if one thing breaks, the whole thing kind of implodes on itself. Whereas little ones, they can break and then repair themselves, and it can continue. So.
And everything's transparent as well. So, you know, there's a lot of talk about transparency of block producers and transparency of large companies. We can be audited in a second. You know, we can just run a script against our books and everything would be audited. It would see what I voted for, what other custodians voted for, so you can see who stands for what. You can see where all the money's gone. You can see everything within the company or the DAC or the community, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. What do you think about, excuse me, kind of radical transparency within block producers? I mean, that sounds like a kind of decent example of it. I know that Crypto Lions does do you still do a monthly financial report? And so, you know, there's things like that going on. Are you guys advocates of as much transparency as possible? Do you think there's any places where maybe there shouldn't be transparency?
We're for it. We strongly believe that, and we're going to keep doing monthly reports of all our expenditures. EOSdac kind of does that too, like, because the transactions are all there. Like, I actually went through it after I looked at the membership portal. I became curious, and you could see like little 50 EOS token transactions that say like whatever translation on them in the memo. You look at you can't do this for all block producers because it's just like one big transaction to an exchange, and that's all you know, and then you sort of lose the trail. So yeah, but yeah, I'm for it. I think in this environment, it's important. I hope it becomes more important. I hope the community cares enough. But yeah, I guess you could say that some people live in a place where it's not safe to disclose how much you're making or something like that. But so there's a case to be made, and there's a place for not being transparent. But to the extent that you can, I feel like you should, because it's the EOS community sort of entrusting you with this technical responsibility, and you should put your cards face up on the table.
Yeah, block producers are more and more like politicians every day. So the more honest and open we can be about where it's all going, the better, I think. And to the company level, I think it's important. Any DAC or company that is taking people's money should be accountable to where that's going and who's spending it. Once it gets to the personal level, I think it's fine to send it off to an exchange and mask it that way. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I don't think anyone should be displaying how much they spend on personal items every month. It's not reasonable.
Yeah. So the transparency on the corporate level and kind of the political level, but not necessarily the personal level, makes sense. And it is getting more political every day, and it's almost like the transparency is the antithesis to the politicalness of being a block producer, and also kind of this kind of corporate entities that are popping up, where it's becoming almost sometimes your standard corporation, where you know the expenses are all balled into one big thing. You don't know everything that's going on, or how the money's being moved around and things like that. And so that move towards politics and the standard corporate structure is, for me, is something that I like to see kind of combated on the other end. You know, there's a bigger idea going on here with EOS for me, and I like to see any little ways that can be pushed forward. I like to see that happening. So,
and it's not just financial either. It's political decisions as well. So which direction we choose to go.
Mm-hmm.
all our votes will be the same as they are for block producers. So you'll see which block producers agreed to which proposals, and you'll see which custodians agreed to which proposals within the DAC. So if you're a token holder and you've got an incentive to, or you've got some involvement, then it would be interesting for you to see who is voting which way. Whereas a traditional board seat, you don't know who's voting for what. You don't know how those decisions were made, but you will see the actual decision making almost real time.
Yeah, that's cool. Has anyone seen any like meetings televised, or excuse me, not televised, but recorded and put out there? I know that maybe some of the bigger block producer meetings around launching were possibly put out there. Has there been anything like that where the actual meetings of people discussing have been put out?
All of our tech meetings are recorded and broadcast somewhere. I couldn't tell you where, but I know that Luke records every tech meeting that we have. So everybody's opinions there. You'll see that we don't always agree. You see we spend half the time arguing about the technical solution, and it's all out in the open, unfortunately. Yeah, it's out there.
Cool. All right. Well, it's been fantastic to talk to everyone. As we start to wrap up here, we'll go around and get some final thoughts. So, Bohdan, why don't you start, and then we'll go Roman, final thoughts, Michael, final thoughts, and then we'll share our links at the end.
Okay, so Jungle 2.0 works good. We reach new TPS. Welcome new testers to test more. Welcome to the new site jungle.testnet.io. And we didn't finish the testing. We will try to do more.
We demonstrated maximum transactions per second of 9,179. Thank you to all the block producers who participated. Check out jungletestnet.io, and a prediction: 2019 will be the year of the sidechain.
Yeah. All right.
So be careful, all those cartels, all those misbehaving BPs. The cost of exit is really low. Don't kill the golden goose.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There's side chains popping up that are already ready, that would love for people to slide over onto them and continue the mission. So be careful. How about you, Michael? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, next year is going to be very interesting. This year was really interesting, but next year I think we're going to just start experimenting a lot more. This year we were just focused on getting one implementation of an EOS chain in there. I know there's a lot of people who have a lot of ideas for different governance structures, different token economics on their chain, and I'm very interested to see those come up. Yeah,
that'll be great. Well, my EOS podcast friends, transactions, TPS 9,179 for all the block producers that participated in that. We're breaking huge ground here. Congratulations, Jungle 2 Testnet, EOSdac also, going into no man's land, decentralizing the entire world. So this is fun things happening. I really appreciate having you guys on the show, and my EOS podcast listeners, I will see you soon. Bye.
The money is not the prime asset in life. Time is, and your time is.